everybody out in the soaping world. This is Soaper Woman of Trace Evidence Soaps. Today we're going to do a fairly simple soap recipe, good for beginners, with a ocean theme called Fins Up. I'm going to talk a little bit too about the tools that I use as well as the recipe, which will be in the box below. You can see here I'm stirring the lye water. I don't worry about it getting too translucent because I'm going to do a lot of stirring, but I want to be able to see the spoon through the liquid. My favorite container is probably the pour spout containers you see here. A lot of people use them. They're very convenient. I use them practically in every soap recipe I have. I put the solid liquids in a high temp container with a high side. This helps for splashing. I know a lot of people use bowls, but things can still splash out of a bowl. This container is very tall, and even when it does splash, I very seldom get anything that splashes out of the container. So that's my main safety concern. I use a room temp method, so I never take a temperature. This stirring process cools down the lye, and then when you add your liquid oils, that will cool it down even more. You can see in the corner my liquid oils are in a measured container. I do weigh everything on a scale, but I still like to have that measured container to give me some idea how much all the oils have totaled up. And it doesn't have to be high temp because you're going to pour your oil into your hot lard or hot mixture with the solid oils. In this case it is lard. I also like to use heat-sensitive spoons. I can't tell you the amount of plastic spoons I've melted before I realized that there was such a thing as a high-temp spoon. Silicone's also really good for that because I think most silicone is good up to 500 degrees. Excuse my voice today. I have allergies and my voice sounds a little like sandpaper, I think, like I'm talking through sandpaper. But try to get through it together here. Of course, I am wearing gloves when I handle the lye. You'll see later in this video I'm not wearing any gloves, but by then I didn't really need to, so I needed my hands to do more detailed work. I do follow safety procedures like everyone else, but once you get very confident with soap and your routine, you know what you need to do that's best for you. I usually, once I get my soaps in trace, I take my gloves off because if I need to work in any detail on the soap, the gloves are awkward. I'm using pumice oil soap, which I don't normally use. Thought I'd try it. Don't care for it. I know some people do, but I don't. It's too yellow. This is a very slow tracing soap, so it's a great soap for beginners. Doesn't have many ingredients. I didn't put any scent in this because it'll sell itself on the embeds and the design. And, you know, some people just don't need fragrances in their soaps. It's not really necessary. Now here I'm putting titanium dioxide in. You won't see that on the recipe. I'm just lightening up my pumice oil. Regular olive oil in this recipe, you probably won't need to put titanium dioxide in. Definitely do on the pumice oil though. And I worked with this soap a very long time. There was no rush. This is really good for beginners because you can take your time. Titanium dioxide is a tricky thing. Can make the soap very hard and dry very quickly. You have to be really careful and watch it because if it gets too hard, it's just impossible to cut. Doesn't mean that the soap is bad. You can still use the soap even if it crumbles. You can use it as embeds on top of the soap to look kind of stone-like. You can put it inside the soap for a shredded look inside the soap. You can use it for rebatch. So it's still good soap. It just is impossible to cut if it gets hard. Now I'm separating the soap. I'm going to do two sort of sea glass colors, one in a turquoise blue and one in green. It doesn't show up, the colors don't show up well here on the video, but they're nice. Hopefully they'll darken too as they dry. Okay. Now that's the mica I used. I used a vibrant green and a teal, well they call it teal, but it's a turquoise. I find blues are very difficult in mica, well in anything really. Blues always come out kind of gray in your batter. Usually you have to put a lot more mica or dye in to get the true color, which can again make your soap a little more difficult to work with. But I was going for a real light color with this, so. And this particular turquoise I like a lot. It stays blue. Color, and right now you see I'm putting in goat's milk soap. Putting in goat's milk, dried. Instead of, if you don't want to have to deal with goat's milk and freezing it, let's say in this recipe calls for a cup of goat's milk, I'm going to put a cup of water in with the lye and then put the goat's milk powder in the soap at the end. And you get the same nutritive benefits in soap. I think you'd rather have fresh milk if you're drinking it, but dried milk is just fine in soap, and it still has all the qualities of fresh soap. And it's a lot less expensive. And it's easy, like in my particular soaping room, I don't have a refrigerator or freezer, so it's complicated for me to do things that I have to freeze. And also it helps if you have a frozen product, your lye can often get too cool, which then you have to reheat it, or you have to wait for something to cool down more, and then you have to get both the same temperature. It's just very difficult, but in a room temperature method, this works much better. Again, this soap is very slow tracing. You can play around, do a lot of things with it while you're trying to, in design. I had to wait 40 minutes for the topping part of the soap to get thick enough that I could use it on the top. I could have waited longer than 40 minutes. It was still kind of soft. So it's very slow to trace. And it's an inexpensive batter as well. So if you're beginning and don't want to put a lot of money into it, it's a nice rich batter, but it's not expensive. Now you can put fragrance oil in this if you want. A water-themed or tropical-themed fragrance would be really nice with this. Kind of what would be expected. Kind of pina colada or an aqua or even a cotton scent would work well. Now what I'm doing is a very casual pour. I'm layering the green and the blue. I don't care if some of it goes into it. Think of waves and how the colors mix. So I just went back and forth and layered. With the magic of video, you're not going to see me doing all the layers, but I just kept going back and forth and back and forth. You can see I'm using a spoon here to try to keep it on top, but it was still pretty liquidy. So I had modicum of a success at making layers, but it's okay because it's supposed to look like water, so all the colors kind of go together. You can use a hanger swirl on this if you want. I didn't. I wanted it to be more subtle, but you could certainly, once you've layered on the colors, do a hanger swirl with it, which would be appropriate for water. I didn't realize my video had clicked off, but I had just put some deep blue-green mica on top. kind of to make a mica line, and I know this doesn't look like a mica line right at this second, but it will. I love silicone molds, but they do bulge, so if you buy a silicone mold without a wooden box, which is inexpensive and really nice, make sure it has a lid. The lid will pull in the sides so that it doesn't bulge. You'll see here in a moment when my video goes forward, you'll see that all of a sudden the sides aren't bulging, and that's because it had been sitting there for 40 minutes with the top on. See here now I'm spreading out the color very lightly. Don't go too deep. You still want it to be kind of like a mica line. Now, magic of video, there you go. My lines are nice, my walls are nice and straight. Now I'm going to put on the topping that I had reserved of the two colors. You see two of my junky plastic cutting boards that I always use underneath my mold so that I can move them around, because once they're filled and heavy, they do jiggle around. So you need a stable base if you want to pick it up and move it around. If you have limited space, I would highly recommend saving all those old cutting boards that you throw away because they're getting kind of too grungy. Perfect for soap making. So it's a good recycled project, is to keep your old cutting boards. And I have a stack of them that I use, and particularly good on individual molds. So you can line them up on there and move them from your table to where you're drying, where they're curing in the molds. And then I also use them when I make pour the colors on donuts or cakes or something. They drip down the sides because it's easy to pull up the melt and pour off of them. They're just very versatile. They're fine if you use them for cutting boards because that's what they are. So you can cut the soap on them. And they're inexpensive, and you can just have bunches of them. It's one of my can't live without tools. My other one is a toothbrush for cleaning the molds. Can't live without my toothbrush. Now I wanted this top to not be so uniform. I wanted it to look like waves. So I just played around with it until I liked the way it looked. It's going to have a lot of embeds on the top, so it's not going to be very detailed anyway. Just wanted it to look like water, like things swirling around. And you can see after 40 minutes this batter is not that thick. You could have easily waited another probably 20 minutes. But I'm an impatient soaper. I shouldn't call myself soaper woman, I should call myself impatient soaper, because that's probably more accurate. Now putting some blue glitter on top. I did go back and put on some clear glitter as well, because this blue glitter was not very sparkly. I think just because the deepness of the color. I did want it on there to give a more blue watery look, so it did serve its purpose. But once everything was on there, I went back and sprinkled it with clear glitter. In my opinion, if you don't have any other color glitter and just have the clear glitter or the pearlescent glitter, it's all you ever need in glitter. You don't want to invest a lot of money in colored glitters because it's just not necessary. Clear glitter will cover everything. Also, I think it's nice that people are going to walk out of their shower with glitter on them. And for the most part, it's clear glitter, so you don't have all kinds of colors on your skin. Now here, just like I did with the mica, I'm making sure that all the blue areas are mixed in better. I'm not going deep, it's just a light on the top. Strictly a topping decoration. Making it look watery. And now comes my embeds. Love, love, love this mold. I think there's 16 fins on one mold, and you get 2 molds. At least I got 2 of these molds in the purchase. And it was like $4 for 32, which is great when you're working with melt and pour, that you don't have just a few molds that you have to keep making it over and over again after it dries. You just make it one time, walk away, not have to worry about it. So those are my favorite kind of molds. I think this was a candy mold, but it really is perfect size for soapers. It may have been designed for soapers, I'm not sure. Little hint, a lot of people think if you get a silicone mold of some kind that's very thin, that it's kind of cheapy, wobbly. Actually, I find thinner silicone molds easier to work with than thicker ones. They're easier to peel off. The detail seems to pop out better on the mold. So in this case, thin or inexpensive does not necessarily mean not as good. Sometimes the more expensive, thicker ones, it's more difficult to get the items out of the mold, especially if you're working with cold process in the molds. Melt and pour comes out of molds much easier than cold process. It tends to lose some of the detail, so a thinner mold makes it easier to peel off of the cold process soap. And I do both. I think why why melt and pour is so popular in embeds and soap making is because you don't have to wait for the embeds to cure. So you can just have an idea, whip it up that day, and make it, and not have to wait for the embeds to cure. I do live in a humid climate, so I have trouble with my embeds, melt and pour, anything, crying. It cries extensively, massively. It can be wiped off, but it's very difficult when you're selling soaps, so I tend to make a lot of cold process embeds, plan ahead, so that I don't have to deal with that crying. If you live in a drier climate, you probably wouldn't have to worry about it. But melt and pour is pneumatic, and it sucks up moisture. So the more moisture you have, the more it's going to cry. And there's my pretty fins up soap. And just hold on here a minute and we'll show you the finished product.
Suddenly, I took the train. Suddenly, I grew old again. I believe I escaped the rain. When suddenly I grew old again. It seems so vacant on the top floor. Spare me a room, bite me a piece of the groom. Don't be shy, boy. Don't be shy, boy. Free me, Florida. Don't be shy, boy. Don't be shy, boy. Don't be shy, boy. Free me. Florida. Suddenly, I took the train. Suddenly, I grew old again. I believe I escaped the rain. When suddenly I grew old again. It seems so vacant on the top floor. Spare me a room, bite me a piece of the groom. Don't be shy, boy. Don't be shy, boy. Free me, Florida. Don't be shy, boy. Don't be shy, boy.